Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Herpanwo TV and welcome to this. A video I wasn't actually planning on making because for the tiny 1% of you who read Herpanwo Voice, you'll know I've already written an article on this subject. But I wanted to do this video so that more people can hear about this story and I can get more feedback from other people because I think it's important. I want to know what other people think of this. And second, I want to go into, perhaps expand in a bit more areas, into a few more areas I didn't in the actual article, maybe go off on a few tangents that could give some clarity to what I'm talking about here. Now, I've discussed before several times experiences I've had involving hypnagogic and hypnopompic experiences. These are altered states of consciousness associated with sleep. And I'm not talking about dreams. It's associated with either going to sleep, in which case it's hypnagogic, or waking up from sleep, in which case it's hypnopompic. And I've had both. In fact, if you go to the link in the description box, you will see some details of that. For example, the ghost I saw in my bedroom in 1996. This was, I think it was about 1996. This was as a result of hypnopompic experience. I was waking up. I woke up very suddenly. I mean, I was completely awake when it happened, but I can't prove that it was not in some way involved in that. Now, I also get experiences which could be described as being like hypnagogic, when I'm kind of in a half-asleep state, and this usually means I'm either having a light nap, a very light nap, or when I've dropped off in an unexpected situation, for example during the day when I'm sitting down somewhere, and very often it's in a conference. And I've described the various, I have had strange experiences before where I'm sort of in a half asleep state, and it very often is when I'm sitting in a conference, like I said. So it's normally a situation where I normally would be awake in the daytime and I suddenly find myself going into a kind of half asleep state. And then I have some kind of weird experience. I see something, usually I just see something unusual. An example of that would be, of course, the situation in Probe a few years ago, where I saw, when Miles was on stage doing a talk, and I saw a kind of copy of him, a second Miles Johnston standing next to the original, completely still, not moving. God knows, this world is barely big enough for one Miles Johnston. How could we possibly have two? Anyway, either it wasn't real or it was an apparition from another world, and it disappeared when I woke up, so you don't have to worry. Now, sometimes these experiences, these hypnagogic, hypnopompic experiences, are associated with sleep paralysis. Now, as you may know if you're a regular viewer, I get sleep paralysis a lot. In fact, I've had it my whole life. It seems to be becoming more common. I get it, I'd say generally about once a fortnight, once every couple of weeks, certainly. Although I don't keep a diary of them, but I'd say it's every couple of weeks I get sleep paralysis. This is where I wake up, and this is quite common actually. I wake up and open my eyes and I can't move. I can't move anything except my eyes. I lie completely still. Now, most of the time, in 99 times out of 100, all that happens is I lie like that for a while, in this sort of state, unable to move, but opening my eyes. And then I eventually wake up fully. That's what happens in 99 out of 100 times, or even more. However, occasionally, just a handful of times, I've seen strange things in the room with me. And I describe these in, I'll put some links in the description box to articles and videos where this actually happens and I describe it. So for example, I saw a dark cowled figure, rather like the Ringwraiths in Lord of the Rings, standing over my bed one day when I woke up. That was quite frightening, although it didn't do anything, it just stood there. Some people have very horrifying experiences during sleep paralysis. They encounter strange creatures which attack them. Sometimes sit on top of them, try to crush them, stop them breathing. Sometimes they sexually assault you. Things like that. I mean, the old hag, for example, is quite common. Some people encounter the old hag. Now, I'm lucky I've never met her. She's a horrible, wizened, ugly old woman wearing a ragged, dirty dress and with a big pointed hat with a brim. And people who have encountered her report her as being one of the most unpleasant sleep paralysis characters that there are. It's interesting actually that very closely resembles the Hollywood depiction of the witch, doesn't it? Like in films like The Wizard of Oz. Interestingly, you know, people say these things are imaginary, but they're just it's simply it's your brain playing tricks on you. It's a kind of a dream. It's literally just a dream, which is continuing in your waking state. Because of the sleep paralysis, your dream carries on when you're half awake. Now, the problem with that is that, I mean, if that was the case, then people's sleep paralysis experiences would be as varied as dreams are. In other words, completely varied. And that's not what happens. What you find is that people all over the world report encountering the same kind of creatures. There's the hag, there's the hat man, there's the cowled figure which I described. Other people have seen that. And these figures, these experiences appear to be universal to humanity. So regardless of your racial, geographical, cultural background, you will encounter the same things when you suffer sleep paralysis. Now that has fantastic implications, because there's only two explanations here. Firstly, that every single human brain produces certain images under certain states of consciousness, and that in itself requires a hell of a lot of explanation. Or, and I think it's far more likely, what we're perceiving is objectively real. And there was one point in time when I was actually lying in bed when I was with Sue Stain, my girlfriend at the time, and I woke up when there's a sleep paralysis. This was broad daylight, and there was a strange old woman standing by the bed. Not the hag. She looked a bit sort of Chinese. She had her hair with buns in, with little sticks poking through them, the way the Chinese or the Japanese have them. And she was standing there like that. She had a sort of blue dress on with certain features, I think jewellery, and she was sort of like shaking like that and leaned over to one side. And I shouted, I called out, you know, I was in my sleep paralysis state, but I shouted out, "Sue! Sue!" as best as I could. Then I woke up, and Sue actually was sitting next to me in bed awake, and she said that all that time I had not uttered a word and I had not moved. So I was completely normal. Maybe I had my eyes open, but she didn't notice. Very odd that. So what happened was last month, as you know, this refers to, I'm actually referring to something you may already know. If you've watched my film, and it's a very popular film actually, A Person Goes to OLM, I mentioned this briefly in the later on in the film, towards the end, summing up. Last month I attended the Outer Limits magazine conference, as you know, in Hull. If you're a regular viewer, you'll know that. And while I was there, while I was in the audience, and there was a speaker on stage, I started to feel drowsy, as I do in conferences. Like I said, this is quite a common thing. And this was not because the speaker was boring, far from it. The speaker was generally very high quality. It was just because, well, you know, as I explained in the film, I was under stress. I'd not slept well. I didn't sleep well while I was there. The room was warm and cosy. It's the usual story. I'm just sitting there and I'm quiet and I'm going like that, and I'm sort of drifting off. And I was also, so I was in that situation. I was suffering from lack of sleep, uncomfortable, very, very cosy. Another thing was, of course, I was actually feeling uncomfortable because, as you know, this trip was under rather unusual circumstances, and I was wearing rather unusual clothing, which was not comfortable at all. So I slipped into this hypnagogic state as I was sitting in the audience, just watching the speaker. And it was very, very similar to the incidents I report on the train in the background links. Soon after I started dating Sue Stain in 2008, I was on a train on my way back from visiting her. It was after our third or fourth date, and I went into an altered state of consciousness when I was on the train, and I was just sitting there on the train, and it's dark outside, and you know how the windows on the train are kind of like, they act like mirrors when it's all dark outside. So I was in a sort of a sleep state, looking at the mirror, and I suddenly realised there was a man standing in the aisle looking at me. I could see him full on in the reflection, and I could see him slightly through the corner of my eye in actually real time. In my peripheral vision, he was actually there as well. Actually, not just his reflection, he himself. My eyes were slightly blurry. I said he looked like a man wearing a bar steward's jacket, middle-aged man, bald or balding. And after a while, you know, I woke up and the apparition just disappeared. It was just standing there staring at me. And as you know, if you're a regular, you've probably heard this story before because I've mentioned it on other videos. I went and saw Sue the following week, and I told her about the story, and she gasped. She went upstairs and she got the photo album. She brought it downstairs, opened it up, showed me a photo of a man standing behind a bar wearing a bar steward's jacket, bald, middle-aged. She said, "Is that who you saw?" And I said, "Looks a bit like him, can't be certain." She said, "That's my dad. He died in 1988. It was kind of a thunderclap situation. So it's interesting if that was like Sue's dad. It reveals an awful lot. Firstly, he was probably doing what a living father would do, which was keeping an eye on the kind of men his daughter was hanging out with. What kind of man was I? He was following me around maybe to see what kind of man I was. Which is interesting. It means that this is interesting. If it was the spirit of Sue's dad, it means that he retains a memory of the spirit retains a memory of who he was in his previous life in this world. He also has the ability to see into our world and to interact with it when we interact with certain people when we're in a certain state of consciousness. Now, this was very similar. I was sitting in the audience at the Outer Limits magazine conference, just watching and I was going into a hypnagogic state. You must have experienced this yourself. And I went into a similar state of consciousness, half asleep, half awake, as I was on the train that day. And suddenly I was sitting in a chair, and to my left it was an empty chair beside me. To my left, the seat beside me was empty, and something happened. Something strange suddenly appeared in the mist. Now this was a cloud. It was like something strange. There was a cloud of mist. Something strange appeared in the mist. Something strange appeared next to me, like a cloud of mist. A cloud of white fog appeared next to me. Very suddenly, just blew up suddenly like a balloon. Or if someone had just suddenly released it. It formed quickly to my left. And out of this miasma, a figure appeared, a humanoid figure. It was a young woman. And it was very, very quickly. This literally happened within about 3 seconds. This whole experience lasted probably 3 to 4 seconds. Very quickly, a shape appeared in the mist. It was a young woman. A young woman with blonde hair, very pallid skin, very pale looking skin, bright blue eyes. I remember bright blue eyes. She was wearing what looked like a white dress. I couldn't see her whole body though, only sort of her top half. She was wearing what looked like a white dress. She had a slim figure, like I said, quite thin arms. I remember her arms were quite thin, stick-like. And she literally appeared within just a couple of seconds, and I could actually, unlike on the train, I could actually alter my vision. I did look round like that. I altered my vision, my field of vision to the left. So I moved my eyes to the left, and I could see her straight on. Very, very clear she was too. And she raised her hand like that and just reached out. She smiled very sweetly at me, and she reached out and just put her hand on my shoulder, as if in a sort of supporting, comforting way, smiling at me. And then suddenly I snapped out of the hypnagogic state, and she was gone. The whole thing was gone. I was like that, awake and alert, and it was gone. The moment I woke up, the apparition just completely vanished. I think I described this briefly in the background link. I'll put a link in the description box, definitely to A Person Goes to OLM. I describe it briefly in that. Now, in that reportage, I actually suggested that she might be an angel. Even though, there's no angel, it's probably not a very good word actually, because it is culturally loaded. And angels are usually associated with the church, you see, because they are described several times in the Bible. I don't go to church myself. I'm not formally religious. I don't follow any organised religion. But they're mentioned several times in the Bible. And they're depicted very regularly in religious art, in icons, in stained glass windows, in books, in prayer books, Bibles, things like that. Now, what's interesting is that the angels there's a distinct form when it comes to depicting angels, and you're familiar with it. They are very beautiful human beings, humanoid beings, with wings sprouting, birds' wings sprouting out of their shoulders. So they have an extra set of limbs, which is these wings sprouting out of the shoulders. In the same way that bat wings do out of demonic beings, these are like big birds' wings. coming out of their shoulders, and they're often depicted also with a halo around their head, a bright circle, a light around their head. A lot of the halo, it represents divinity. Indeed, Jesus, Mary, other figures like that in icons are depicted with halos. But of course, in the Bible, they're not described like that in the Bible, or any religious text. They're not described as looking like that. In fact, the Bible simply doesn't describe their physical appearance at all. And indeed, but from their behaviour, we can probably glean that angels actually probably don't have big wings sticking out of their shoulders. They probably look fairly much like us, and we know this because in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, we have the story of Lot, the virtuous man who lives in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and I can't remember which one it was, but these are two cities that have fallen into sexual depravity and drug taking and hedonism and things like that. So God decides to smite them with fire and brimstone. But before he does that, God has the decency to go to find Lot, because Lot is a good man who worships God and does all these things, and so God decides to rescue Lot and his family. So he sends angels into Sodom and Gomorrah to find Lot and warn him what's going to happen and escort him out of the city before it is smited with fire and brimstone in true biblical style. And now the angels, in order for the angels to move around Sodom and Gomorrah, to traverse the streets and not stand out, they must look pretty much like us. Otherwise it would look a bit weird. These beings with halos around their head and wings walking through the city. But really, so in the Bible doesn't describe what they look like. The word angel has Greek roots. Angelos simply means messenger. That's all it means, a messenger. And excuse me. So it's someone like someone who delivers a message, I suppose. And angels often do that, don't they? But the term angel could be really, it doesn't have to be anything to do with the church. It could be related to almost any benevolent supernatural being. Could be described as an angel. Of course, it's not just a thing from Christianity. Jews and Muslims also have the concept of angels within their theology, and there's other unrelated religions as well, such as Sikhism and Baha'i, which emerged from the South Asian area. They are non-Abrahamic religions which have the concept of angels in them. And they've actually become very popular in New Age circles. When I was in Findhorn, the Findhorn community, I don't think I've ever done a dedicated video to that, but no, I did. It was called New Age. Yeah, I did a video called New Age a long time ago. I did a video called New Age, and I talk about my time when I spent a week at the Findhorn community in Scotland. Very, very interesting. Disappointing, very disappointing, but interesting. Now, there's angels. They always go on about angels everywhere in Findhorn. They're always going on about angels there, and there's this Vatican of the New Age, as it's called. There's I remember the signs saying, "Please clean the bath," "Please your bathroom angel," things like that. And people wear angel badges and things like that. It's now in my book Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, available at all good bookshops now, priced £10. If you go into a bookshop and this is not on the shelf, it's not a good bookshop. Never shop there again. But as you know, as readers of this book will know, and it's two sequels, this is the Roswell trilogy, there is a character within it. There is a character in this book called Flying Buffalo, who is described by another character as being an angel. Now, Flying Buffalo himself is actually not in form like the traditional angels of the church. Yet he is a benevolent. I mean, I don't want to give you spoilers here, but he's obviously very, very different to the other characters in the book. And Flying Buffalo is a benevolent supernatural being. So this is so he's actually described. One of the characters actually describes him specifically as being like an angel, but then qualifies that by saying it's the closest description word he has. It's not exact, but it's the closest he has. Now, so what is this young woman who appeared beside me and put her hand on my shoulder? I could remember feeling. I felt her hand on my shoulder. I felt her touch. It was really amazing. I distinctly remember feeling her touch. It's a soft touch. It wasn't warm, or she didn't have a warm or cold hand. I had clothing on anyway. So I'm just going through my notes here. But I distinctly felt her touch me. I distinctly felt that feeling, yeah. And it was very clear. It was it wasn't like my eyes were blurred, like with the encounter on the train with Sue's dad. It was very lucid. Very lucid indeed. Like I say, the whole experience probably lasted 4 seconds at the most, but it was very, very vivid, a very, very vivid image. Now, if the being I saw was an angel, or whatever word you want to use, why did she come and interact with me at that moment? And that's an important question. Now, if you watch the whole video, you'll know, and I actually talk about this that this wasn't like my normal experience of being in a conference, which is normally fun and enlivening. This was I was in a situation where I was frightened and uncomfortable. I was very nervous. I felt insecure, for reasons that I explain in the video A Person Goes to OLM. So I basically put myself in an awkward and risky position at that moment, and I was the whole time I was there. And it's possible that she came to me at that moment because she felt that maybe she is my guardian angel, or maybe I've got more than one, I don't know, or just another angel, passing by, like angel second class, like without wings, like Clarence in the film It's a Wonderful Life. Brilliant film, that. I've done a video about it. And she decided to intervene at that moment just to give me comfort and strength because of the position I was in. It could be, that she'd been there all the time watching me, but only got this chance to communicate with me. She may have been waiting for a moment a chance to communicate with me, but she had to wait until I was in an altered state of consciousness to do so. In this case, it was being in a half-asleep state. Is it possible angels surround us continuously, but we just don't see them? They're invisible. Rather like in the film City of Angels. Now, if you've not seen that, that's very good. It's a very, very good film. It's a sad film. It's actually a tragedy, but it's uplifting as well. But it's Nicolas Cage actually plays an angel in it, and he can appear to people. He can actually appear in front of them. He does make himself visible to some of the humans in the story. Yet under normal circumstances, he can't see them. Yet they just glide around the world, providing comfort where it's needed. And maybe they do. Maybe they just continuously surround us. I mean, demons may as well. Benevolent and malevolent beings. There are many. If you Google encounters with angels, I mean, there were so many reports. There are numerous reports from all over the world throughout history, and there are videos about them. There's some really good ones. I mean, there's and they're moving. There are touching stories about a young boy. He was an old man when he was interviewed. This was quite recently. He was interviewed, but he was a young boy. It was World War II, and he was in bed, and he woke up, as I did. He woke up, and there was an angel sitting on his bed. He remembers seeing it, sitting there like a young man. He saw the wings coming out of his shoulders as well. It was glowing. It had it was giving off light, and he said he could feel the weight of it on his legs. So he felt very heavy sitting on his legs, and he just watched it for a moment. He wasn't frightened. The thing didn't move. It didn't speak to him. It just sat there. There's another very interesting story of a woman who was walking alone in London at night, and she had to go through a subway, and you know what those are like, these horrible places at night. And she was walking through the subway, and she suddenly saw there were a bunch of 3 men sitting in the subway. They were drinking heavily. They had bottles with them, and they were drinking. They were looking rowdy and rough. And she was like a woman walking alone through that tunnel towards them, and she started to feel very nervous, understandably, and feeling very vulnerable. And suddenly she realised she wasn't alone, and there was a woman walking beside her, a woman with long black trench coat and black hair, like a man's trench coat it was described as, and she had long black hair, and she just looked at this lady and smiled and took her hand. And they walked past the men, and it appeared that the drunk, rowdy, violent-looking men didn't seem to notice them. It's like almost like she made this woman invisible. And when she got to the top of, she got out of the subway, and the angel let go of her hand, and the woman got out of the subway, turned to look at her to say thank you, and the angel just smiled and vanished. So they sometimes come to us in these benevolent supernatural beings that come to us in our hour of need. And I think one of the most touching angelic encounter stories is of an angelic encounter by someone in a completely random situation. It's a totally random situation. It was unbelievable, but it's one of the most moving stories. It's a lady, again. It's a woman just doing. She's not walking alone at night. She's in the supermarket doing her shopping in the middle of the day, and there's lots of people around her. And she's at the checkout, and she's doing the checkout. And she notices there's an old lady standing by the checkout with white hair and glasses, just standing beside the checkout, just standing there. And she didn't think much of it. She assumed it's just someone waiting for someone to pay for their shopping and things like that. So this lady, the woman doing the shopping, doesn't think much about it. And she packs her shopping up, but as she's walking away, the old lady turns to her and says, "Hello, Sarah," and given her, if that's her name, I can't remember. "Hello, Sarah." She looks at the old lady and says, "Oh, what are you doing here?" She says, "I'm waiting for you." And she says, "Can I take your shopping bag?" And this old lady carries one of this woman's shopping bags. And they go out, and there's a car parked outside in the car park, and there's a man is standing there in this car. It's a black car, not a white car, interestingly. And he says, we're gonna give you a lift home. And he helps put the shopping bag into the shopping bags into the boot of the car. And the man gets into the driver's seat, and the old lady is standing nearby. But as this shopper turns to look at the old lady, she transforms into this classic angelic figure, a huge white, not really distinct, but a huge white outline with wings. And then she goes back into being the old lady humanoid figure. And so the shopper gets into the back of the car, and they drive her to her home. They take her bags out of the boot and carry them in, and then she turns to say thank you, and they both vanish, and she runs outside, and the car's gone. It's just vanished. It hasn't driven off. It's just gone. That's it. These angels just they intervene in this woman's life simply to help her home with her shopping in a completely normal situation. It's amazing, isn't it? I've actually got a very good friend in the Truth Movement. I've known him for a long time, and he and I have a mutual friend, a lady called AM. Now, I don't know if you heard about it. You may know about this because you may have seen the article written by David Icke on davidicke.com. AM was a good friend of David's as well, and she and I used to present something called Planet X Radio on Liverpool City FM, and she also helped organise the Exopolitics Expos in Leeds and Liverpool, and she was an amazing woman. She was an amazing lady, and my friend and I were both very fond of her. And my friend, who actually lives in Liverpool, knew her much better. He knew her much better than I did. And in 2019, at the end of 2019, December 2019, AM died. I think she was only in her 50s. She wasn't that old. I went to her funeral in Liverpool. I remember. I wrote an article about this on her Panwell Voice. Now, my friend didn't know about it. You see, I mean, I didn't tell him, and I feel bad about that because I should have done. I assumed he already knew. It's one of these situations where you just assume someone else has told him, which is not true. And he only found out about a month later, and he was very, very upset, of course. But he did. He told me something interesting. Actually, he said that when he actually received a spirit dove, he actually had an encounter with a dove, which is often called the spirit dove. It's quite common that when someone dies. Now, he didn't know she was dead at the time, but he did receive this spirit dove, and he just didn't think it was anything to do with her. About a month later, he found out she died. Now, he said to me, could this angel have been AM? I don't know that. I mean, this being didn't look like AM at all. However, spirits can take on different forms, and because he believes that AM was working closely with angelic energies, and so that's could be AM. I don't know. I'm sure AM is watching over us, as the spirits can look into our world. I found, you know. Now, another friend of mine had an explanation too. I told another friend of mine about this. Now, this is interesting because she is definitely not a skeptic, but her explanation is surprisingly prosaic. She said that the explanation for this was that was my disguise. As you know from the film, I'm wearing a COVID mask. Now, as I said, I don't habitually wear COVID masks. I sometimes wear them for a joke with a rebellious symbol on the front, rebellious message on them. Apart from that, I never put them on at all. I don't approve of them. Yeah, I put one on for this particular mission because because of course I needed to hide my features. And what she claimed was this mask I was wearing was reducing had reduced the efficiency of my lungs, and I was suffering from a mild chronic asphyxia, as people with these masks on sometimes do, which is why they are a health hazard. And as a result, I suffered from a mild hypoxic hallucination. Now, I thought I was a bit surprised when she came out with this, actually, but it's possible. I can't prove that's not the case. I certainly did find I did have to labour with breathing when I had this thing on me. And as I said, I've never worn since. I never will. But even if that were true, the effect may simply have been another mechanism for my altered state of consciousness. So an alternative to hypnagogia. It could simply have been that. Either way, I mean, I can't prove or disprove what happened to me. I can't prove or disprove what I encountered was. I don't know what it was. All I know is it was very real. It was very vivid. It was definitely the most vivid hypnagogic experience I've ever had. And it came at a time when I needed to know that someone was on my side and was watching over me. I think if I wanted, even if it was only subconsciously, I wanted someone to be on my side. And this was an opportunity for that to be the case. My mission to Hull, of course, was very stressful, as you know if you've watched A Person Goes to OLM. And if that's the case, then it would make sense that if there is a benevolent being out there with the ability to intervene and aid me, even if it's just to comfort me and let me know that I'm not alone, then that would fit perfectly. I can't prove what happened to me, but all I can say is, you know, if this was a real heavenly interloper, all I can say is thanks very much, thank you for being with me at a time when I needed somebody. I'm really keen to get your feedback on this, you guys in the chat. You know, if you've had experiences of angelic encounters or even demonic encounters. I'm always very interested in things like this. Let me know your experiences, and as I said, just check out the stories of angels and angelic beings, and people have seen them. There's so many. Go to YouTube, there's whole videos about them. A lot of them are told from like a Christian perspective, but they're always very interesting, always very interesting indeed, regardless of your beliefs. I don't think, as I said, I don't believe they are a phenomenon that is necessarily religious or confined to one religion. They are spiritual but not religious, to use that old phrase. So more videos coming soon. Watch party. There's a watch party coming up. Yeah, I want to do a live stream as well at some point. Oh, so the cryonics one, I've got to get that out of the way. I've been putting that off now for months. Anyway, keep an eye on the channel. There'll be more material coming soon. Thank you very much for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.